This is the only video you need to learn how to grow this. I'm gonna walk you through step by step on how to grow literally any plant. If you live in an apartment or if you live on acres and acres, do not skip any steps in this video. If you follow everything exactly as it said, I guarantee you will be able to grow like this. The environment is literally everything to everything, and everything has a certain environment that it grows best in. You need to start paying attention to where the sun travels, because wherever you get the most light, that's where you can plant your fruiting and flower plants. But wherever you get shade, that's where you can plant leafy greens and things that are just gonna grow for the leaves. The temperature, is it hot, is it cold? Normally most plants like between 70 and 85 degrees. Anything beneath that, it's gonna start slowing down plant growth. So you need to become aware of the seasons, what time of the year is ideal for planting certain things. So step number one is to look up your growing zone. So go on Google, type in USDA Hardiness Zone by zip code, and then put in your zip code. It's gonna give you a range of these different maps of where the low temperature is. That's important because certain plants can only go down to that low temperature or they'll die. Once we know our zone, then we can start making a list of the plants we actually like to eat, because we don't want to grow plants that we don't like, and we can match that with our zone. Fruit trees, literally the easiest thing to grow. Actually easier to grow than a vegetable, but with a vegetable, you get food a lot sooner, like within a few months. With a fruit tree, you have to wait a year before you get fruit, but you only have to plant it one time, and literally you could forget about it and you would get fruit for basically the rest of your life. So I'm gonna focus on fruit trees because it just makes more sense. If you have very limited amount of space and you're growing in pots, then everything I say applies to pots as well, or houseplants. It doesn't matter, it all is the same. If you live in a cold environment, you can grow a ton of delicious food like peaches, plums, apples, cherries, nectarines, elderberries. But if you live in a warmer area, then you can grow things like sapodillas, citrus, dragon fruit, just to name a few. So for example, if you live in zone 10, like where this muscadine grape is growing, you can't grow regular grapes here because they need the cold hours, just like the stone fruits. So this is another example of why you have to know your zone. Step 2, get your plants. Step number 3, prepare the growing areas or the pots. It's literally the life in the soil that actually grows and feeds your plants, like the fungus and the bacteria. So it's all about growing that stuff. And if you can grow that, you can grow anything. I want you to imagine a forest floor. I want you to imagine all the layers of organic matter. You got all the leaves that fell down, they're rotting and they're breaking down into the richest compost. Now I want you to dig down a little deeper. What you're gonna find the minerals, the rocks and those things. What you realize is the really good top layer of soil is where all the life lies. Locate a high quality compost, or start making some by getting a bunch of free arborist wood chips and then just letting them break down where they are. Wait a year or so and you will have the richest fungally dominated compost, which is perfect for growing fruit trees. Use Facebook, Craigslist, check garden centers. When you search, look for the search term bulk compost. If you're growing in pots, the best soil you can get is called Fox Farm Ocean Forest Blend. It's on the showcase. You can go see what I'm talking about. It's one of the best because it has really good broken down composted material. It's got worm castings in it, and it's got a lot of other micronutrient profiles. Not all compost is the same. The way you know if you got a good one is by the smell. Does it smell like a really strong dirt? And then also by the size of the particles. If it has big chunks in it, then it means they either didn't strain it or it's not completely broken down. It has to be completely broken down into a rich, dark earth for it to grow really healthy plants. So if you're really serious about growing your dream garden, you're gonna wanna go to several garden centers or different compost producers and compare them to find the best one. And you'll know the good ones by how passionate the people who are making it, and especially if they have a garden growing, you can see for yourself that it's good compost. Keep in mind that the native soil actually has a ton of minerals that are good for your plants, but it's the bacteria and the fungus and the compost on the top layer that actually unlock, literally take those minerals and convert them into an organic form that your plants can absorb. And if you can't find compost, or you don't have the means to buy it, All you gotta do is call your local arborist, the guy who cuts the trees, and say, hey, would you like to dump your wood chips on my property? And they're gonna be excited because they don't have to go pay to dump it at the dump, and they can bring it directly to your place. But keep in mind, you're gonna have a big mound, but all you gotta do is wait for that stuff to break down, and you will literally have the perfect compost, but you have to make sure it's completely broken down and there's no big chunks in it. One of the most common ways that fruit trees die is by stem rot. So the way that you prevent this is you plant them on mounds, about 5 foot by about 5 foot, mound up your compost, plant it directly in the middle, about a foot high. This lifts up the stem, and so when the heavy rains come, it's never sitting in a pool of water, which is what causes the rot. Now, on the opposite end, if you live in a dry environment, like let's say Arizona, then you want to do the opposite. You want to dig a big swell, a big hole, like 10 foot wide. You want to dig down about maybe a foot and a half, but you still want to plant on a mound because, once again, you don't want the stem ever sitting in water for very long. The fastest growth, because you can pump in more oxygen because it's lifted up a little bit higher and it can breathe, but this will also keep it from rotting because it's not sitting directly in the water. When you plant, I always recommend you inoculate your roots with the fungus and mineral blend, organic. What this is going to do, it's going to put the fungus directly on the roots. So as soon as those roots start growing, the fungus starts growing, and as far as that fungus can grow is as far as your plant can absorb minerals, and the fungus can grow much further than the local roots of the plant. So whenever you fertilize with an organic blend, you don't need to put it real deep because the feeder roots, the roots of the tree that literally make the relationship with the bacteria and the fungus, literally right on the top level where the bacteria and the fungus live because they can get oxygen. That is where you put your fertilizer. That is where, whenever you're watering, you're literally pumping in oxygen to those roots, which really is putting in oxygen to the soil life. So once you get your tree planted, you're gonna call your arborist, you're gonna go to your garden center, however you want to do it, and you're gonna get a ton of wood chips. The wood chips help hold the moisture in, they keep the weeds out, you don't have to pull weeds, they make everything look nice and tidy, you have the contrast from the green to the orange, and the best part is, you don't have to fertilize really when you get mulch, because it's gonna break down, it literally does everything, it's gonna do all the work, so you don't have to. Do not forget to mulch. So what about tree spacing? You're just gonna look at the full size of the tree, go look up whatever tree that you're looking for. Say you wanna get a citrus, say it gets up to 30 feet, then you're gonna wanna plant on the center of the planting with a ruler. Take a ruler, plant one here, say this is the best sunlight in my yard, I really like this citrus. Plant it right there and then run your ruler 18 feet north and then put the next one. I know it sounds complicated, it's not. Once you get to this stage, you're gonna see what I'm saying, it's super easy. Get your ruler and go measure it. That way you make sure you have enough space so you don't have to go in and cut the trees all the time. Or if you're okay with cutting the trees, then you can plant them closer together. But keep in mind, you're gonna have to be doing a lot of cutting. That's what commercial farmers do. A lot of them actually have these big trucks that come in and they literally just chop the tops off the trees and the sides of the trees to keep them this small round shape, and it allows easy picking of the fruits. They do this with the citrus, but keep in mind that's a lot of work cutting your trees if you're doing this just by yourself. But the bonus of planting things really close like the commercial growers do is it makes for better fruits, because once again you have a bigger root zone to a smaller top of the tree, and so the amount of fruit that you're going to get is going to be less, but they're going to be bigger, they're going to be sweeter, and they're going to be better quality. Plant your plants where they get the most light possible. If that's on your balcony, if that's north to south, if you have a lot of acreage. But the main thing is you want that direct sunlight hitting the plants. That's what's going to give you the most flowers, that's what's going to give you the most fruits. But if you're growing green leafy things, then plant those under the trees so they get shade, so they're not stressed out and they're gonna give you more leaves. When you got plants, you got to master this skill, and it's watering, which is crucial, but there's a science to it. It's not just put a little sprinkle on your plants whenever you feel like it. There's a consistent basis to watering if you want your trees to produce as much as they possibly can. So with new plantings, you want to water every other day because those roots haven't established themselves. They haven't really grown out of that root container that they've been in and they've been used to. So it normally takes around a couple weeks for them to kind of start growing out and get into the surrounding soil. So you really need to water them every other day, sometimes every day if it's the middle of the summer and the sun's really strong. And then after that, then you can dial it back to every 2 days, maybe every 3 days, maybe even once a week, depending on the temperature. Because when it's cooler outside, the ground doesn't dry out as fast and the plant's not sucking up as much water. But when it's really hot and they're growing really fast because the sun's really intense, then they're gonna dry out faster, so you're gonna have to speed up their watering schedule, just like your metabolism when you're working out or you're doing something really vigorous. But how do you know when it's time to water? All you gotta do, stick your finger in the ground. And if it feels really wet, then don't water. But if it starts feeling kind of halfway wet, kind of halfway dry, about 2 inches, 3 inches down on your finger, then you know you need to completely saturate it. Whenever you water, you wanna make sure you water completely, because you don't want there to be dry pockets in the soil or in the pot. And if you're watering pots, don't think just because you watered it and all the water came out the bottom really fast that the plant is completely saturated. You want to keep watering it, and you want to check the weight of the pot. After you stop watering it, you come back and you check the weight of the pot. Then you'll get an idea of how long you actually need to water it for that sponge-like soil to soak up the water. So how long should you water? Well, it depends on the pot size or how big the plant is. But just imagine you need to completely soak the root zone whenever you water. So that might be 5 minutes, that might be 10 minutes. But keep in mind, when you water a pot, you want to do it slowly. Do a little bit at a time so it doesn't just run off the sides and go out of the pot. And once again, check it by the weight of the pot. But if you have a big fruit tree like this might take you 45 minutes to an hour to water one fruit tree at a time. So the most efficient way to water is with the drip system. These little bitty drippers, they drip water just in the root zone, so you're not losing the water to evaporation from spraying the water in the air. Quick tip, always make sure you use grafted fruit trees. Don't grow from seeds, because seeds don't breed true to their parent fruit. So in other words, Michael Jordan, if he has a kid, chances are he's not going to produce another Michael Jordan. But what if we could clone Michael Jordan? Well, that's what grafts are. They're literally clones from 200 years ago, maybe 300 years ago, maybe 1,000 years ago, yes, perpetually kept alive by literally cutting them off from that old plant, splicing them onto a new seeded plant. That's the only use for seeds most of the time, unless you're coming up and you're trying to find the next best fruit.